So the Obi-Wan Kenobi series came and went, and I don't know about you, but left me wishing it hadn't come at all. Yeah. And there were some cool scenes every now and then, but that was too little in between, And then all the nastiness about even before the show gets off the ground, they start accusing everybody of racism while they're the ones tokenizing a person. Just continuing on with the absolute nastiness to distract people from how lackluster the show was. But I saw all 6 episodes, so now I know, pretty lackluster. So anyway, that's done, but it didn't need to be this way, and apparently, and this isn't really shocking or anything. I mean, it was long gestating in the rumor mill about plans for an Obi-Wan film. Well, apparently there was going to be an Obi-Wan trilogy, but then, Solo failed, and they decided to abandon their standalone films, which oddly enough, even with Solo, as stupid as it is, Solo and Rogue One, that's the best efforts they did. Maybe if they'd have kept going with Obi-Wan as it was originally supposed to be, it might have been all right, It's just that god-awful sequel trilogy that just guts everything, So anyway, there was a different writer in charge of this project that was going to be, who was it? Directed by Stephen Daldry and Hossein Amini, I guess. But anyway, that was the original program. Then it shifted to be a TV series for Disney Plus and so on. And then Joby Harold came in, who apparently never found time to watch Revenge of the Sith. Was brought on to be the head writer for the show. And of course, Deborah Chow was the director. All of that. But apparently Stuart Beatty, I guess I'm pronouncing it. It's not Beatty, is it? But anyway, he was the head writer for the film trilogy. So I had an interview with the director, and he went over that, and he talked about, they didn't want to do spin-off films anymore because of Solo and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he says, so when I pitched my Obi-Wan story to Lucasfilm, I said, there's actually 3 stories here, because there's 3 different evolutions that the character has to make in order to go from Obi-Wan to Ben. And the first one was the first movie, which was the show. So it says, which was for him to surrender to the will of the Force. Now, that's the more interesting aspect of this, because a lot of this, of what is there left to tell as for Star Wars as it pertains to the original narrative and Skywalkers and all that. And I always thought, especially for a sequel trilogy, the story should be primarily about the Force itself. But anyway, so, I mean, seems like this was the thinking of this guy about trying to craft the Obi-Wan films. So, surrender to the will of the Force, transport your will, surrender your will, leave the kid alone. So then the second movie was thinking about where Kenobi ends up. And one of the most powerful, and probably the most powerful moments in all of Obi-Wan's story, is that moment where he sacrifices himself in A New Hope. Great moment, makes you cry. But if you stop and think about it, it's a pretty sudden thing to just kind of go be fighting a guy to see Luke and go, I'm going to die, That, to me, that required forethought. That required pre-acceptance that this was going to happen. So that's not a bad idea. That's an interesting point to make, to build your story around this character. And it helps that it appears this writer has actually seen a Star Wars film. Especially the most pivotal moment of this character in the classic trilogy. And how does he become that man? That's the first time you're introduced to him. And he takes Luke on his hero's journey, or starts him on it anyway. And so it's a very good point. So he continues, so again, it's one of those universal things we all struggle with, to come to terms with our own mortality. So that was the second step of the evolution for me, that Obi-Wan now has to come to terms with his own mortality, somehow in a prophecy or Qui-Gon telling him. there's going to come a moment where you're going to have to sacrifice yourself for the good. And then Obi-Wan is like, what? No, 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 I'm here to help. I can't, no. And get him to the point where Obi-Wan has accepted the idea that he's going to die, and that he's going to die willingly at a crucial moment. And you will know when that moment presents itself. So that when that moment comes up in A New Hope, you understand he's recognizing he's been on this journey already. And he's waiting for this moment. And that's how he's able to make it so easily. To do this sacrifice and die. So that, to me, was the second evolution. The second film. The second story. So for me, if I have anything to do with the second season of Obi-Wan, that's the character evolution that I would take him on. That, to me, is really interesting. And like I said, universal. So that's a more interesting plot point for the overall narrative of an Obi-Wan series, in this case a trilogy, than what you get in the show. Now he's saying that the show, or the season 1, is what makes up the work that he did for the first film. I don't know how much of that survives into what the series actually is. Does it concern Reva? Does it concern him going to have to save Leia and all that sort of stuff? As far as the Force and everything, he's very weak in it. He's like he's forgotten it entirely, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, he's there to protect Luke, but he's already given up and everything. It was just so bad and stupid, and how it was presented doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If it would have done more about him exploring aspects of the Force that he has yet to understand or know, that would have been a more interesting approach to it, rather than just having him torn down without much explanation to it, other than that he's 10 years later still depressed about Anakin and everything, which to some extent it's understandable, but not to the degree of how they did it. Especially, again, he's there on Tatooine still because of the mission to protect Luke and eventually train him and all that. But they start off the series with him pretty much broken and not even attempting to do it, even though he argues with Owen about it. Who knows? This is a very vague description, but it's just, I don't see any of this about him. It's just tacked on. He tries to speak to Qui-Gon early on. It doesn't work. At the end, he meets Qui-Gon's ghost, which apparently, according to George Lucas, Qui-Gon was never quite able to appear in his ghost form. You could hear him and communicate with him, but you could not see him. But, they kind of fudged that. So, whatever, but that's it. That's the only inkling you get of any kind of journey for that. So the second season would be all about him becoming in tune with the Force far more than he ever was, so that he becomes this wise wizard, guy in New Hope and all of that. It's still important to note that even though, yes, it appears he's all very well prepared for the final end, whether he knew it was exactly at that moment or what have you, but at the moment that it's happening between his fight with Darth and he sees Luke, he knows that this is my exit, and all of that. And of course, the line, he says, if you strike me down, I'll become far more powerful than you can ever possibly imagine, because he's already achieved the immortality that the Force can provide for those who've achieved it. And he's done this with his communion with Qui-Gon, and probably his abilities to communicate with Yoda, despite the great distance and everything and all that, because Yoda said, I'm going to train you, and how's he going to do that? They're not in the same planet, but that would be how. And all of that stuff, and it would open the doors to more story elements to pursue for Star Wars than just the lazy, lackluster, bad rehash of things done before that they've done. And so it would take someone who has some actual skill and talent to flesh that out and to make it an entertaining narrative to follow for a film or series, which I don't see any of that coming. But it's the better aspect of what to approach for something like this. And the same crew that produced this first, if they try to do a second season, I mean, can you imagine how bad it's going to be? I don't know. It's just too bad that wasn't pursued. Why not? Just the stupid virtue signaling, superficial crap. I guess. I don't know. But it's just another example of, missed opportunity yet again. So maybe they'll cobble something together out of that. I wonder if this guy gets a credit for that. I don't know. But I'm not impressed with Joby Harold here. Plus, it's also important to remember that in the original trilogy, even though Obi-Wan is this wise old wizard-like guy and has some sort of presense here as far as his own fate and whatnot, he's still not fully divine, if whatever as you would put it, in that both he and Yoda are pretty adamant as to what Luke must do, and they say you have to destroy Darth Vader. There's no other choice here. Luke finds there is another choice. He saves him. He turns him back to Anakin, and then Anakin kills the Emperor. And the story's over. The Emperor's dead. I don't give a crap what they say. Clones, whatever, fine. But that's it. Anakin was the chosen one. This is how the prophecy is fulfilled. He kills Palpatine. Well, they didn't really see that coming. They saw as Luke being the one. And in a roundabout way, he is too, because he saves his father, But they didn't think that was possible. So, despite the the elevated levels that Obi-Wan and Yoda achieve, they weren't perfect. They couldn't quite see that this was a possibility, and that's kind of like the overall miracle of the Skywalkers, that this even happened. And which should be an indication that Luke's, new Jedi that he would create would be very different from the previous one, because, he's discovered there are other options there, and he overcame the dark side, stuff like that, all of that. So you don't just make you don't go too far one way. As we've seen a broken Obi-Wan who just suddenly because Leia inspires him to be a man again. Whatever the hell that was, he suddenly decides, oh, I'm the hero. I've got to save people. And all that, to now go to the other extreme where he's godlike or something. No, you wouldn't want to do that. But it's a delicate thing, and you got to work at it. And it also helps that you actually watched some Star Wars movies, preferably the original 6. In fact, that's the only ones you do watch. Instead of coming in, I don't know. Did Obi-Wan know that Darth Vader was Anakin? Did he know that? I don't know. Let me call Pablo. That you can't do that. It's probably. I'm thinking it's too late. Maybe Marvel has a chance to right the ship. Maybe. But Star Wars, I don't know. This was something you should not have done. Messing up Boba Fett was pretty bad, but messing up Obi-Wan, whew. So, well, we'll see. But right now, not looking so great. So anyway, it's an interesting little tidbit about it. Just kind of makes it worse. This might have been better. Not a lot of details here, but at least the core idea of approach. This guy had a better one than what you get from the D+ series.